And go ahead, Ty, with the mission statement.
Okay. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at the Helping Parents Heal meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose children have passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to learn with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. And with that, I'll turn it over to someone to welcome our special guest, sweet Sara.
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and read Sara's bio. And thank you. That was wonderful, Ty. You always do a wonderful job. Let me go ahead and find her bio first. When the love for a child goes beyond the meaning of life and death, what do we do with it? Sara Ruble is Scott's mom. Scott Michael Jesse died suddenly at age 19 of natural causes that could never have been predicted. Through a profound poem found the day after Scott's funeral, Sara knew his spirit was very much alive. Today, she and Scott work together as he channels through her the deeper spiritual meaning of life, death, the afterlife, the power of the soul plans we make with our children, and how healing comes from understanding those pre-birth plans. Sara has been a presenter at many national conferences as well as HPH Zoom meetings. Her powerful blogs written with and channeled by Scott are Death Teaches, www.deathteaches.com, and Spirit Teaches, www.spiritteaches.org. And maybe, Irene, you could type those into the chat box. And I am truly honored to, without further ado, present Sara Ruble, our speaker for tonight.
Wow. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. I'm thrilled to be here and see all of your faces. I would love to know you all personally, but I'm going to take in all your names right now, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I am one of you. I'm a mom that I was 46 when Scott, my only child, died, and I could never have imagined what my life would be at that point. And I know that you have all felt this in one way or another. So we relate to that in just uncommon ways, and yet common ways. So in doing this, first of all, I have to thank Irene and Elizabeth for inviting me to speak at the conference. And I'm sorry that we're not down there. Actually, I was going to be on my way to Hilton Head this week anyway, so I would have had 2 great trips down to the south. I live in Ohio now, but and I would have visited with Irene and the others, Sue and Heidi and Beth, that are down in that area. But I'm doing the right thing. I'm sheltering in place and staying home in Ohio. But just to have been asked to be a part of that conference, because I was at the first conference, and for those of you that I know that you were anticipating going, those that you were going, is that it was spectacular. It was heartwarming, heart-filled, and it was just so much more than any of us could have imagined. So grateful to both Irene and Elizabeth for being a part of all this, and now being able to talk with you for a little bit tonight and kind of give you my story, but also what I want to really do is just to inspire you with what I could never have imagined would happen in my life once Scott passed. Just briefly, he was, I said, 19. He was in college. He wanted to go to work in a national park out in Colorado for the summer. His dad and I were divorced at the time, but working together and knowing that our concern was that Scott had a seizure disorder, but it was controlled well with medication. but we wanted him to be able to be where he wanted to be. He was very much an environmentalist, and so we wanted him to get out there and just do his thing. And he was there for 5 days, but he did get sick. He went to the doctor. He had strep throat. And he was the only college student there at the time. And you've heard of the kids going to the Grand Canyon and places like that for the summer. And Scott was expecting, I think, a dorm full of kids to be there when he got there, but he was the first one because he got out of school early. So early in May, he, just about this time, he was home and driving out to Colorado with his dad. But he got strep throat out of nowhere and went to the doctor on a Friday. I talked to him. He'd gotten medication. My concern for him was so great because of the seizure disorder and knowing he was sick and probably didn't have much of that medication in his system, but I trusted. And I still trust. And yet on Monday morning, Scott did not report for training with the adults in the national park. And they went to his room and they found that he had died, he had passed. They were horrified, I'm sure. It would have been wonderful if they would have checked on him over the weekend because they knew he was sick. We just trusted. We had no cell phones in 1994. When you go back to that point, it was just the communication was so little. We just had landlines and made a time that we would talk once a week. And so we didn't get that phone call other than after he got back home from the doctor on Friday. But they discovered him. And after an autopsy, we knew then that Scott had died of a seizure disorder, possibly of strep throat, of dehydration, of elevation, and possibly sleep apnea as well. It was like the perfect storm just came in and took him away. And it was horrifying. And I know you each have a story too. And it's so shocking and it's so incredible that you can't even comprehend what the rest of your life will be. But I want to reassure you, because I know our children are very aware of everything. And Scott has told me, now that I hear him all the time, that he literally left his body. There was no near-death experience kind of process that he had to go through. He literally left his body. He was sleeping. He was asleep when he died. But he left his body and he immediately knew he was in spirit. It was just that quick once he left his body. And that brings me great peace. I mean, I did not know that at the time, of course. I had to grieve as deeply as everyone else here has and is. And the more newly bereaved you are, my heart goes out to you because there's so many unknowns. We have to piece a lot of things together on this journey to try and reconcile what has happened to them, to our child, to our children, to us. And that is definitely a process. And I often say, as Irene reminded me a couple weeks ago, that I say, trust the process. Yes, trust this journey. It's going to take you, as it has me, I know, and I've heard from others, places where we never thought we would go, to the hardest of times, to also the most brilliant and unbelievable times of awareness and growth that must come. And we will all do it in our own way, but we have a commonality that ties us together, that we could all be here together tonight and have an understanding that we're looking for understanding, awareness. We're looking for healing in ways that we never thought could come. So what happened with me with Scott was I got a sign from him. And remember, 1994, no one talked about signs. It was not on TV. It was not in the books. There were no books, actually. I had like 2 books to read at that time. And yet, Scott clearly came to me the day after his funeral with a poem that was in a notebook paper package. Like you go to the store and you buy notebook paper. And I'd gotten up the morning after his funeral, and I thought, I need to write a letter to our community and thank them for the wonderful love and the stories and everything that they brought us at calling hours. We didn't even call it a celebration of life at the time, but we celebrated Scott. But at his calling hours and then at his funeral, I just felt such a deep need to get out of bed and go write that letter right then. The only paper I could think of was Scott's notebook paper that he hadn't taken to college. So I pulled out 2 pieces of paper out of the package and came a piece of notebook paper on the top and also a poem. So this poem was in the notebook paper package. And it was so weird, right? First of all, to have it in there. And then when I started reading it, and the title of the poem is Children Are Like Kites. And I found out that Irma Bombeck had written this, but this is also another version of it that somebody else had added to. But it's like our children are like kites, and we let them out a little bit at a time when they're growing up, and then we pull them back in and keep them safe. But then we know we need to let them out a little bit more so that they can become who they need to become. Then we pull it out and we pull them back, or we get them out of the gutters, as it says. And with each twist of the ball of the twine, it says, there is a sadness that goes with the joy, because the kite becomes more distant, and somehow you know it won't be long before that beautiful creature will snap the lifeline that bound you together and soar as it was meant to soar, free and alone. So at that moment, in all of my tears with all of that that's been happening to me at that point, I'm reading this and it's like, is this from Scott? Is he like telling me he's free? I know he's not alone, but that he was free to soar. And soar is such a beautiful word, because I wanted Scott to soar. I wanted him to go to Colorado and be at the national park, to be all he could be for that summer. So the unbelievable part about this, and I can show you this, is you see at the bottom, you see the kites, and they spell May. And Scott passed on May 20th. So it wasn't just the poem, it was the actual month that he left. So that's how I started my journey with Scott. He came to me, and I know many of you are feeling that as well. And you know that your children, even if it's not all the time, and you just get something every so often, or a dream. Back in the day when we didn't know anything about spirituality, and we were like just learning about grief, mostly just the immense grief, Scott kept coming to me in different ways. And he's my teacher. He's been my teacher all along, in ways that I could not have known, in ways that only he could create, that I've been just amazed with dreams that he was there talking to me, or showing me that he wasn't ever really leaving me. Now, I always thought, I'll tell you this because you need to know this, I always thought that maybe at 3 years, or somewhere around that time, Scott would just stop doing the signs. And they weren't coming like every month even, they were coming periodically. But I was so concerned that at some point in time he would get busy, in spirit, or I called it the other side, and that he would need to do what he needed to do over there. And I always worried that it would just stop, the communication would stop. But that is not what I discovered. And I'm at year 26 this month. Don't do the addition on Scott's death and and how old I was when Scott died. But he has never left my side. And he's come to me in so many varied ways. It's not continual. It's surprising all the time. Even today, I can have a sign from him, even though I hear him, that just blows my mind, because they're so prolific in doing this. But just trust that your children will come to you as you are discovering. And keep an open mind that they have a connection with us that we never thought could last as long as it does. Which then leads me into that beautiful topic of soul planning that I knew nothing about for 14 years. There was nothing written about it that I had discovered until I read a book, Your Soul's Plan, by Robert Schwartz, called Your Soul's Plan. And at that time, as I read every page of that book, I underlined, I highlighted, I circled the page number, I folded it down. There were so many insights and so many pieces of those, of the parts of the soul plan that just resonated with me. And it began to give me the bigger picture of how Scott and I would be and were connected forever. And I know that's a concern for many of you. We don't know how long the signs will come. We don't know any of the parts of all of this spiritual connection, or how long any of it will continue. And as I said, I want to reassure you with that, because the connection that we have with these children, with our children, these were planned. And I don't know how many of you believe in soul planning, if this has been something that you've been opened up to, But basically what it means is that we plan a lifetime with our children, with our husbands, with our families, the families we were born into before we are born. So it goes way back to that time, to a very spiritual time when we were all, figuring out why we needed to come into this lifetime together. And at that time, we knew all the answers. We knew why we're going. We knew that our children would be leaving even. But then after all those very detailed plans come to be in spirit, then we are born and we forget it all. It doesn't seem fair, does it? But in a way, I can see the meaning and purpose of a spiritual journey that we're meant to go on with our children, or a spiritual life that we're meant to become more aware of. And so, and I see, thank you, Irene. Yes, Your Soul's Plan by Robert Schwartz. And actually, he lives an hour away from me, which is so ironic that who lives in Ohio? Well, Ty does, but, and Christina, she's here. But to actually be able to meet him and to be able to talk with him about this in ways that Scott has even taken me beyond what Robert was teaching me, because Scott has now shown me that the soul plan is also a big part of my teaching, and that's what I was going to talk about at the conference, but we'll wait for that. I'm not going to give you all the details on that, but I will use some of those aspects of it just to kind of enlighten you and allow you to know that the soul planning has been a key component to my being able to heal just more fully than ever before than I could have imagined, because it proves to me that this ongoing communication with Scott, the ways that he has shown me that he's around me, the way that he has pushed me and pushed me. Honestly, he didn't even let me prepare for this talk tonight. And like even this morning, I'm going, please, let me just have some bullet points, that I don't want to disappoint anybody tonight and not bring some really important key points that I would want everyone to get from me and my experience. He's going, Mom, we will tell him, we will do this together. So right now, I know that I am channeling not only my life, but Scott is coming through me in ways that he knows what you all need to hear in ways that I wouldn't know. So we have a blended voice now that I never could have imagined was true until it happened to me. And I tell you this because I would imagine that some of you sometimes wonder if maybe you're not hearing your child in that way too, that they push us into the places that we need to go. And sometimes it's really hard. I mean, I've had some tough experiences along the way that kind of never got me to a place that I did not trust this journey with Scott or just trust myself, but some places that I had to go to really see myself more fully. And unfortunately, what we're all learning is, and maybe, I mean, I say unfortunate, it could be another word, maybe it's just the way it has to be. We learn so much from pain. We learn because we listen more closely. We need answers. We cannot just sit still. Obviously, you're sitting here, you're listening. You want answers. I wanted answers. And so we will dig in our heels. We will go to the nth yard, right? To try and find more about this connection, this relationship, the meaning of it, and to trust that we're not alone in this. And that's really what I want you to know. You are not alone. I just know that 100%. I'm not the only unique mom here that is hearing my child. I know this for sure. Elizabeth knows she was meant to do something huge with this. And Irene, I mean, I'll use these two as examples in particular, and others that I know. But you both know, don't you, that you were moved into this place by your children, pushing you into reaching out to other parents with the ways that you could. And we will all do this in ways that we need to, what we have soul planned. I feel like I am day to day, even when I don't know what I'm doing, I know I'm following my soul plan. And that brings me grounding. Don't we need grounding? We need something that kind of holds us in place at times. So even if I don't know what's going on and I don't fully understand it, the one thing that I will do is I will say, I know this has meaning. So I hope that that's a takeaway that you'll get from me tonight, is trusting that everything that you have to go through, whether it's really hard or really beautiful and spectacular, it all has meaning, because this is a journey that we're on now that's bigger than we could have ever known. It's with our child, it's with our families in spirit, it's with new friends we've come together with. You here tonight, you were meant to be here. I love that you're all here. You were meant to be here for whatever reasons. And if something that I can say, just one thing resonates with you, or 10 things that we say resonates with you, then that's the reason that you came. And we do find, I'm sure you're finding too, that some of what we hear resonates with us and some doesn't. And there's so many podcasts now, there's so many speakers, and there's so many books that you have to kind of figure out what feels right for you on your journey. And if you have a really good friend that's grieving alongside of you, another mom or dad, and you're not feeling the same thing as that person is, that sometimes on the journey, that maybe they see grief in a different way, or they see the spiritual journey in another way, just trust that those times will come, because Spirit also teaches in contrast. And at those moments, you have to decide, do I believe this or do I believe that? Or maybe I don't understand either one of them. I'm just going to wait for that to resonate with me, or for me to feel it in a way. So we'll all go through this journey for our own unique journey. But the beauty of this is having the support and having a conference or having these kinds of meetings where we're able to connect on a level that I never really had. But I still made it. That's the part I want you to know. I didn't know what I was doing. The first time I went to a counselor, because I didn't know anybody else had lost a child. And I went to a counselor, a grief counselor, and she was new. The first time I talked with her, she basically told me I was codependent and sent me home with a book on codependency. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's not about grief. And she goes, I think you need this first. And it's like, okay. I am kind of person that will do whatever somebody that I respect tells me to do. And so I didn't fight that, but it was something that really was helpful. And yet we really did move into the grief, and I got so much more from her in the ways that I needed, that I'm just really grateful for that. So, I went to counseling because there weren't things like this, but there was always something that I could tap into. And it has brought me to a place now that I can honestly say that I feel like I am a teacher. I have so much information, and with Scott, not just around me, in me, trusting that. I want you to know that they're not out there just sitting and waiting for you. They're such a part of us. I don't know how many of you feel that already. Just know that the possibilities are really very good for you to find that out in time. So what things have been so important to me on this journey, besides the soul planning, is my friendships, and knowing that those that I have found along the way that have given me the insights that they learn, knowing that we are collaborating on a journey that is so unknown to so many. And even if you have a sister maybe that has gone through this, or a brother, and you are going through it as well, to know that the path that you have to take is really your path. It can't always be mirrored by something that someone else has gone on. And I know we struggle with people telling us how we should grieve and what we should do on this path. And even my counselor, there were times when it's like, she said, Sarah, you've got to look at this new normal. And it's like, this is like at 3 years. And it's like, I don't see anything normal yet. And I don't really understand what a new normal is. And I kind of just put it out there. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't really like that because I didn't know what a new normal would be without Scott. But then I heard someone else tell me, because everybody's a teacher, they called it a new reality. And that made more sense to me in a way. And whatever resonates with you, take it in. And you find out how does that sit with you? For me, it was a new reality that I had to look at. I could not see anything normal about what had happened to me or to Scott. And so I changed that terminology. And for me, but I share it with you, just maybe that's something that can help you as well. But we do have so many, oh gosh, when I read Helping Parents Heal and the posts that some of you and so many others are posting, and the experiences that you have with others telling you what you should do or how you should see your grief, or you're not doing this that they think you should do. So early in grief too, which is really so hard to take because no one knows the depth of this journey until you're on it. I had a friend whose baby died at 6 months when Scott was about 5. And I didn't know what to do for her. I mean, we didn't know anything. This was, again, in the 90s or 80s, actually. And then one of our mutual friends told me at some point that after a year, my friend Linda had not cleaned out her daughter's closet yet. And it's like, I didn't really react to that because I didn't know if somebody should clean out their closet when their child passed within a year. I didn't know. So I didn't really react to that, and I didn't put in my 2 cents and say, oh, she definitely should get rid of those little dresses and all those little, all those little pieces and parts of Emily Jo's closet. But how many years later did I find out what it was like to clean out a closet? And I did not do it within a year, but nobody was pushing me to do it. I mean, I waited until I could do it. And so I think we all have to find what we can do, but just knowing that there's others that are going through what you're going through, and that you can talk to somebody who's going through this loss as well, and know that you're not the only one struggling with others telling you what to do. We have to find our own way. And also sometimes we'll be pushed and we have to do it in a way. If we have to move, we would have to do that. But that's in the timing of your soul plan as well. And so if you can kind of look at that and go, okay, why do I have to go through this now? This doesn't seem fair. It isn't fair. And then I return to that soul plan and go, it's time. I'm not they're telling me it's time. I don't want it to be time yet, but it's time for me to do this and to move into something different. At one point, my husband and I bought a condo in Florida. Thinking this would be so great just to be able to go back and forth from Ohio to Naples, Florida. And I was so worried, would Scott know where I was, right? Would he know I was leaving? He wasn't cremated because, oh gosh, we didn't even do that in 1994 that much. So there was a cemetery and his birthday would be then. It's like, how do I do that? How do I navigate? I needs flowers. I called one of his friends, and his friend was so lovely with his 2 little kids, and they went to the cemetery and took pictures for me so that I knew that Scott was taken care of. But it's like I took pictures of Scott to Florida with me. It's like, he's got to be here somehow. How do I get him? Oh my gosh, he brought me signs in Florida. And that's how I learned, wherever I go, he will be there. And that, how that feels. We need that reassurance. We just need to be able to feel that and be able to breathe into that. But I do want to tell you a story of what happened on one of Scott's birthdays. March 20th is his birthday. And I was down, if you've ever been to the Naples Pier, it's quite lovely and it was beautiful. And I had one beautiful rose that I had taken, and my husband and I were walking out to the end of the pier to, toss this beautiful rose into the ocean, into the Gulf. And so I did, and I took a picture of it, and it was floating away. And then I got distracted by a dolphin. It was like, oh, it's a sign. It's a sign. Clearly it was a sign. And then we were just wandering around and thinking, oh, I'm so glad I was able to be here and do this with Scott and feel that, he's got to be here with me. And it wasn't long before I saw this woman walking around with this beautiful rose. And it's like, this looks exactly like the rose I just tossed into the water in honor and memory of Scott. And I knew it was the same rose. So I went over to her and I go, wow, that's really beautiful. And she said, yes. She said, I saw it in the water And there was a fisherman right here. I said, she said, I think that must be for me. My brother, this is his death day. This is his angelversary day. And so the fisherman fished the rose out, my rose for Scott, out of the water and brought it up and gave it to this woman. And it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I was thrilled because it wasn't just for me. And my love for Scott was then the love for someone else's, a woman that I wouldn't have known. So when those kinds of twists and turns go on and you really look at that, and it's like, that was just beautiful. And so I knew that Scott was orchestrating even then with that. And I never told her that the flower was mine, the rose was mine, or in memory of Scott. But it was, it was something that was just a really cool moment. So I see lots of questions coming in. Is there something that I should be addressing, Elizabeth or Irene?
So Irene, I don't know if you've seen anything in particular. Most people are just agreeing with everything that you've been saying. You've been, everyone is talking about the things that you are talking about resonate with them. So asking the name of the book, obviously, and Irene put that in there. But you're doing a great job. And if you want to just continue, then we can ask for a question, or would you like to ask for questions now? We can do that as well.
I don't know. Does anyone have a question? Raise your hand, maybe. No?
Yes, Irene does.
Irene does.
So, Sarah, when did you learn to trust the voice? Because I know you're not obviously hearing Scott's voice. It's your words, because so many times I will hear something, but right away I say to myself, oh, that can't be. When you know. So how do you get past that, or how did you get past, and how are you comfortable now with knowing that it is Scott?
Okay, great question. Okay, I always wanted to hear Scott say in his words to me something like, Mom, I loved your chocolate cake. It was so special. And so that was kind of what I was waiting for, hoping for. I didn't even know if it was possible. But I did hear words initially that I knew were from Scott, but didn't sound like him, and he's never really sounded like Scott. But in 2001, which was 6 years after Scott passed, and I've told this story before, so some of you have heard it, so bear with me. But I was in my house just doing something, and I heard the words, I heard words just like go through my head that said, build the children's memorial. And it was like, I don't know what that was. It didn't sound like Scott. It wasn't even a voice. It was just like a banner went through my head that said, build the children's memorial. And it was like, I do not know what that was. And really, I didn't know at that time what it would sound like or feel like if Scott came to me. I didn't even know it was possible, really. So 3 weeks later, I was sitting at a red light, just daydreaming. And once again, the exact same thing happened. The words just came through, build the children's memorial. It's like, what is that? You know, it's like, and then it just dawned on me, is that Scott in some way telling me to build a children's memorial? Because I already decided 3 weeks ago that I didn't know how to build a children's memorial, and I've never fundraised, and that wasn't really something I was interested in doing. But the second time, it not only came with the words, it came with a feeling of, this is Scott. He is telling me to do this. Oh my goodness, what do I do with this? So I went home and I said to my husband, who's not Scott's dad. We were only married 9 months when Scott died, when he passed. We're still married. So I want you to know that. But I said to him, do you think I'm crazy? I think Scott just told me to build a children's memorial. He's going, what can he say, right? He'd had to say, oh, you're not crazy. It must be Scott. But the beauty of it was, I felt like I was already set up to do this I had started a bereaved parents group 3 years after Scott passed. And it was, I already had a team of people in my parents group that I could, use that had varied backgrounds that were so perfect for building this memorial in fundraising and public speaking. Well, I became a public speaker with all of my notes and just wanting to get the right words out to people. And in 6 months, we raised $50,000 and we actually built, it's what's called the Angel of Hope in Stowe, Ohio. There's 100 of them across the country. You may know of that already. But those 3 words, build the children's memorial. Yeah, that came across, and that was my determining moment of like, Scott is so much present in this whole thing. I went and asked the children's hospital, local children's hospital. Was asking doctors and anyone for $1,000. That's how I was doing this. So I had a meeting with a neurologist, and he had a meeting prior to our meeting. And there were like boxed lunches left on the table when I went in. And he said, hey, do you like brownies? Because there were some leftover brownies from our lunch if you'd like to have a brownie. And at that moment, without a doubt, I knew Scott was present because we love chocolate. And a brownie was so significant in that moment. I literally, after I talked to him and he gave me the $1,000, he told me he would send that check. I went out to the parking deck and it was just like, yes, brownies. I mean, it was one of those things that you couldn't even make up. And it was like so particularly designed for me. So that was the first real communication that I had. And then there's another, I don't know how many years that went by, because I've had a slow process, my friends. So I know yours is going to be different than mine because there's so much awareness now. But at some point in time, Scott actually did start talking to me. And he calls me Mama because we've had many past lives together, which I absolutely love. And no doubt, I'm certain that all of you have had past lives with your children as well. I do not believe this would be your first time around with this. The connection's too strong. It's too bold. It's too deep for us. And it's that deep for them as well. So we have these deep connections that will keep us moving along, I'm sure. So at some point in time, he started calling me Mama. He never did before. I was Mommy. And so when he comes to me and he goes, okay, Mama, we're going to do this today. We need to write a blog. And it's like, no, I'm not writing a blog. This is like 5 years ago. I can't write a blog. I don't even know what you're talking about. He goes, well, we need to write a blog. So I just kind of took it in like I do because I listen and I love him and I don't want to disappoint him. I said, but Scott, I don't know how to do this. And he says, don't worry, I'll show you how. It's like, okay. And so I started channeling through him. The words were coming out for the Death Teaches blog. I don't know if you've all seen that, but it really, and we have a book that goes with it too as well. But not that I'm selling the book by any means, because it's all online at spiritteaches.org. But we did like 17 blogs, just writing them out. But I had no way to put them on. I had my technology skills are not good at all. And yet he kept telling me, we're going to use all these blogs. It's like, okay, I'm going to show you who's going to help you. Okay. And just 15 minutes from my house one day, I was going somewhere else and I went by this building that had been a restaurant that had closed and now became another business. And I wondered what it was. And so I looked at the sign and it was like, it didn't make sense to me. It was called Transmit Identity, was the name of the company. So on my way back, I looked at the sign again, still didn't make sense. Then I went back again and I mean, not intentionally, I just drove by it again. And in little letters underneath the Transmit Identity, it says, we build websites. We connect you to the websites. And so at that point, I knew that this is who Scott was telling me that I needed to go talk to. So I drove in and I knew that the blog was going to be called Death Teaches. Now that's not an easy title to tell people typically. So I went in thinking, oh boy, I'm going to have to tell them the name of this. But I went in and there was a lovely young woman. She was one of the owners, she and her husband. And I said, could you help me write a blog or help me put a blog together? I have the words already, so many of them written, but I need this in the blog format. And she said, sure, yeah, we can do that for you. She says, what's it called? And I said, Death Teaches. And she was like, oh, okay. And then she asked me more about it. She didn't even flinch. So at that point, Scott had brought me the next part in my journey. You know, let's write this blog. And he has written it with me. I could not have known where I was going with Scott. And as Irene asks, you know, I do hear him. It's a voice. It is not Scott's voice. So I don't want you to ever be worried that it can only be your child's voice. They have their own way of communicating individually with each of us uniquely, but it's a voice. But it's very much Scott. He knows too much about me. And before I really went very public with telling people I was hearing Scott like this, I listened because I looked for anything that might be evil or anything out there or some weird voice coming through me trying to get into my head or heart. And there's never been anything negative. There's never been anything that I could even question. He has been my motivation, my cheerleader, my teacher, some hard things too, he's taught me. And so that is my journey. And I now know that I soul planned with Scott to be a channel, to be able to bring his words through me as even I speak to you, or to write them. We're all going to have our unique journeys with our children. That is mine. And that's what we were intended to do, which I could never have known until it evolved into that. So whatever you're going to be able to do, maybe you plant gardens with your child. My goodness, that is something so beautiful too, to know that they're maybe picking the flowers out for you, or that they are, creating some artistic project with you, or creating a parents group with you. There's so many different things that they need to do with us that can come through them, or you have a feeling that they're working with you on that. But sometimes you have to give it time, because I'm telling you, I'm at 26 years and I'm still learning. And yet my process has been one of taking one step at a time, and knowing that at some point in time I needed to go out and be a public speaker and do a conference. I went to Compassionate Friends to begin with, and it was frightening. But I knew that somehow he was pushing me to get out into the world in a new way. So we listen and we trust. I mean, Bobby knows this for sure, that I tell people all the time, trust the journey, because you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know what can come, even on the darkest days, even on the hardest days. And talk to your child. I mean, talk to them. Even if you're not feeling like they're responding to you, believe me, they're hearing you, they're listening. And at the time that they will need to come through, or it was planned, soul planned for that to happen, it will happen. But we will all have our unique relationship with our kids, no doubt. And it can come in so many different ways. And I'd love to hear some of the ways that you feel like your children are coming through you, because those are our healing moments. Those are the things that we were so afraid that we would never know. As soon as, when I found out that Scott had died, literally we got a phone call from Colorado, that they had found him. And it was like, all I could think of was he was alone. And even now with the pandemic and the number of people who are dying, and the families are so distressed. And I understand this, because they didn't get to say goodbye. They weren't with their loved one at the time that they transitioned. I wasn't either. In fact, Scott died on Friday night, and when they found him on Monday, the coroner, when we flew out to Colorado the next day, said, don't see him. He had been gone too long. So I just trusted it all and didn't see him. So my last goodbye to Scott was, well, when he left to leave Ohio to drive, but then when I talked with him on that Friday afternoon. But you know what? Even for these parents, for the family members whose loved ones are leaving because of the COVID-19, I know that somehow they will make it. And yes, it wasn't the way they wanted it to be. Well, nobody wants this to be this way at all. But you hope that you'll be with your child. You hope you'll be with a parent when they transition. But sometimes we're just not meant to be there. And I had a lot of questions after that happened, but I still found my way. And I just want to put that out there, because I didn't let that really define the relationship that I had with Scott. That, it continued regardless of how Scott passed. Do you know what I mean? He continued the relationship with me. He opened it up in ways. And that allows me to see so much in this bigger picture that I couldn't have known before. And that's why I share it with you, just so, when these moments come for you, to trust them, to trust that this journey that you're on with your child is going to teach you a lot. We become wiser, we become more aware. We look for the meaning in everything. I mean, you see a cardinal, right? What does it mean? Oh my gosh, it is such an amazing thing to see that cardinal, or to recognize their song, or to see a plant, or just see a car that reminds you of your child and know, oh, he's here again, I love it. Or the license plates. When we were doing the children's memorial, we were selling memorial bricks. And we have now like over 700 memorial bricks at this children's memorial. And I needed a really great something to put on a brick for Scott. I mean, this was going to be laid in the ground. It would be there forever. You know, what do I write? What do I write? And one of Scott's friends, I was in the car coming home from Florida, and one of Scott's friends had given me a CD of a song that she felt that Scott, it would really connect me with Scott. And in that was the words, "A brief, bright miracle." It came in. It was like, he's a brief, bright miracle. It was like, that's the perfect words. I love that. I'm going to use this. A brief, bright miracle came into my life. And immediately after I said to my husband, that's what I want to use on this brick, a car passed us and the license plate said, ILV Mom. And it was like, yes, okay. You cannot make these things up. You know that. And there he was giving me he was right there with me in saying, yeah, this is what we need to put on the brick. So I know you'll have moments like this. I hope you're having them now, but just to trust the journey that this child came into your life to be with you as long as they were, to bring you everything that they brought. And I know sometimes these relationships can be challenging in the ways that they are. And I hope next week when I'm talking to Irene's group in the Bluffton group, the Helping Parents Heal, I'm going to be talking about love with a capital L. And I could cry right now, but Scott gave me that, is to use L, when you write love, do it with a capital L. In a way, when you're talking about your child, it emphasizes it, it brings it out. And we need to do that. We do that with each other. We can do that with our families at time when we can talk with them. And sometimes you can just write it yourself if you're writing someone and you know that you're bringing your child into that note or whatever you're writing, even if you just know it and your child knows it. So there's so much that we can do with so many words, and there's just kind of trust what you get is what I'm going to encourage you to do. Yeah. And how do I kind of want to end this here? Okay, I have like 7 minutes. We have 7 minutes. All right, so in knowing this, Scott's going to come through me like he does. It doesn't sound like Scott. I'm not one of those channels that sounds like someone else, or he just comes through me and I listen to the words that come through. And I'm always amazed because, like, when I listen, it's like I hear things that I didn't even know before. So this is a message that your children are coming through me as a whole, with Scott bringing it through, a message for all of your children, from all of your children to you, as we have come together tonight to kind of open up my journey, but to hopefully open up your journey in ways that you'll see a lot that in mind that resonate with you, or that you are just going to take away, and somewhere down the road, remember, I know somebody else has had this experience. It's been validated, and we need those validations. So from our children, we get this. Remember, it sounds like me, but it's not. Okay. When we are with you, we want you to know that this love is so much a capital L. It is a capital L-O-V-E. And we will never, ever not be with you. We may not be with you for you to see or hear us all the time. You may never see me or I've never seen Scott. Actually, they want you to know that. I've never seen Scott out there in a presence. But they want you to know, if you never see me again, know that this love connection we have, nothing can separate us. And we will continue as spirit, as your children, to come to you in ways that you know for sure that is that unique child that I brought into this world, or came into my life as adopted, or in whatever way, this child needed to be with me. And this child says to you, I chose you to be my mom. I chose you to be my dad. I needed to be with you in this lifetime for as long as I was here. And they want you to picture this too. And I was going to talk about this at the conference, but I'm going to do it now. Okay, a jigsaw puzzle, whether you've ever put one together, I've not done very many, but at Thanksgiving I worked on one. It was pretty profound. Excuse me. When you do, let's 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and you build all around the edge, because that's the easy part, right? You've got the flat sides and the corners, and you can kind of piece it together. When you just have that much of a jigsaw puzzle, and then that whole center is empty, so you start trying to find pieces that work together. Imagine that that is our life. Imagine that's your child's life. And each piece of that puzzle that you are working with them to put together, to help them grow, to get them to school, to dress them, feed them, take care of it, nurture them in every way that you could, another piece of that puzzle was going in. Whether they were 3 months old, or they were 33 years old, or however old they were, those pieces to that puzzle were going in, each piece to create the lifetime of that child. And when that final piece goes into the puzzle, that will be the time that that child's life was complete. We don't like to look at it as a completed life at Scott 19 or your child at whatever age, but they know their life was complete at that time, no matter how they left, no matter how they left. So that last piece of the puzzle that goes in and finishes up their own individual unique jigsaw puzzle with all their experiences in there was a time that they were meant to go. And they want you to know that they're not missing out on anything. They're with you, they're experiencing everything. They love in unconditional ways, no matter what we say or do or what we have to go through, they are right there with us. So, okay, I'm going to leave you with that. I hope that that helps you. If there's questions, we can do that when Elizabeth stops the recording.
I am just blown away by that message. That was absolutely beautiful. And I just wanted to tell you that a lot of people have been talking about different things that they've done for their children. I guess that Diana was saying that she actually is filming a movie and that her son is helping her do that. And we have people who are, let's see, Doris is just made a garden memorial for her daughter. I think it's beautiful that you did the Angel of Hope Garden as well. And it's so reassuring to hear about the Souls Plan. There was one question about whether or not we can have more than one Souls Plan. Let's see, I was trying to find that, but I'm not sure if I got that right. I'm sorry. And it looks like Beth has her hand up. Did Beth have a question or not that she wanted to?
That was my question.
Okay, great.
My question was, when you did the soul plan, did you just do it once or did you ever go back and do it again?
Each lifetime that we come in, we have many lifetimes. We think this is the only time we've ever been here, but each lifetime is very unique and each one has it's a soul plan just for it. So I know in past lives, I've been different people, you've been different people. We all have. We've been male, female, but we come into life each time to experience differently as a male or a female. If you read Robert Schwartz's book, it really does illustrate that. I would encourage that. But one soul plan for the entire lifetime. It's from the time we're born until the time we leave. But that part is always a part of our soul. And every lifetime we've ever had is carried in our soul within. Each time we're here, we're a spirit, a spiritual life, and that is all together known to spirit, known to God as our soul. Does that answer your question? Okay.
That's beautiful. And we have people saying that they love the idea of the puzzle. Roseanne is saying that. It's true. The whole idea of the fact that every piece that was supposed to be there is actually there is just wonderful. And you're right. They did exactly what they were supposed to, and they left exactly when they were supposed to. And that's a beautiful way of looking at it. And again, I know that that as I say, Beth's hand is up. I don't know if Beth, did you want to ask a question? You mute yourself if you did. If not,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just wanted to make almost, Sarah, you teach me something every time I hear you talk, and we talk often. It's always another piece of wisdom and another part of that just validates what I know in my heart and what I know in my own story. And something that you had said earlier that just popped out of me is that every parent on this Zoom tile comes here with an inherited culture of religion, politics, mother-father dysfunction. And when we lose our child, that feeds into the way we hold our story. And I love what you said is that everyone has their way of processing. I'm going to say it not the way you said it so eloquently, of processing. But what really came to me very, very early, and I'm 16 and a half years out, is that the boy that I knew that knew me speaks the language that I know with his heart, not his voice, not his presence. I didn't have what Elizabeth had, and I desperately, when I heard her story, I wanted that. I didn't get to have what Bobby had with a hawk flying over and the message. I did, and I can't imagine what it's like to be in the 1990s and have 2 books. When you should see the library that I have. It's like, and I haven't even read any of them fully through. But what came up for me was our way we process is breaking our culture that no longer serves us and being okay and being in a tribe of those of us who are trying to figure out how do we live this new normal. And you say that and teach that over and over. And I appreciate that the way I grieve and find joy in my life is going to be different than somebody else who has a different life culture experience. And I just wanted to say thank you for staying true to your message.
Wow.
Thank you, Beth. Yes, goodness gracious. Thank you. And Sarah, she's right. And my goodness, it is so helpful to have you talking about all of this to all of us. But there was one more question here, asking about whether or not the way that they pass is part of the soul plan. This is from Babette, and I think that's kind of an interesting one. Maybe you can address that one.
Absolutely. And this doesn't just come from me. This comes from Scott. This comes from Spirit, that every child, every death is already soul planned. And even though it feels like it may be at someone's they're under their conditions or they've taken their own life, it was always soul planned for that experience. And that is, I know there's a lot of questions with that, but I clearly get that. And I hear the children telling me that, and they're going, yes, 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 because it's every experience that a child goes through, every experience we go through is teaching us something. And when we look at that and we know that they too came in for an experience that was, unlikely, we thought could happen, it was just the way it was meant to be. There is no stigma to any death. And we all go to the same place. Scott has told me this time and time again, that, and I told you at the beginning, when he left, he just was one, he was one with God. He was in spirit. There was nothing that he had to do. He didn't have to do a review, because this is so interesting too, with the review that we've always heard about, is what I get from him, is that we're living a soul plan that we already planned with Spirit. We don't need to go back to Spirit and review it, because we know it was what we were meant to do when we came here, that we accomplished everything. We do not leave our body until we've accomplished everything we came here to do. So I hope that that makes sense. And that's helped me a lot to try and understand this bigger picture that we all live within. So I'm glad that question was asked, because I would have brought that up if I was meant to, but that was supposed to be asked. So thank you for that. I hope that helps.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. And there are a whole bunch of people saying how they just adore you and what you're saying tonight, and that it's so helpful to them. I think that it's important for all of us to understand that Scott is really close friends with all of our kids now. And so what you're saying is coming from Scott, but also coming from all of them. And it's a beautiful message. And for all of you who are earlier on in this journey, being able to see someone like Sara, who is 26 years into this journey, still communicating with her son, because I think that that's one of the major questions that we have when we start to communicate with our kids. Is this going to continue? It continues forever. They're with us every step of the way. And so you're a shining example of that. And I truly appreciate that, because obviously at 10 years plus for me, I'm still communicating with Morgan, but it is wonderful for all of us, especially those who are earlier on, to be able to see you and know that that's going to be that way. We're going to be that close with our kids forever. Anyway, maybe what we could do.
Elizabeth,
okay.
Bobby's asking a question.
Okay, good. I see his hand. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bobby. Go ahead. Yeah, I just saw it.
He's got unmute.
Okay.
I just unmuted. I would like to say, Sara, I always learn something from you every time I hear you speak as well. I love what you talked about, trusting the journey, and I know you mentioned my name. I did not feel that I could trust the journey, and I, like you, had gone through books and reading everything, because I did not, was not connected to social media. So I was reading books and everything, and I went through almost 2 years of a personal hell, and I was nudged by Jared to go to my first conference. I had no interest in being part of a social group or anything like that. I was always a loner, and you were the first person I met at the conference. And, I appreciate that. We've been close friends ever since, but you kept telling me to trust the journey, and I always trusted my instinct and my intuition in every decision I ever made. And I don't follow a crowd or a certain path. I take nuggets of information that I receive from this person or that person or something I read, and I put them all together and come up with my beliefs. So I agree with you that we're all different. There's no right way, no wrong way. And but you kept drilling in my head to trust the journey, and finally it stuck. So I want to say to everybody out there that Sara is definitely right when she says to trust the journey, that it takes you where you need to go, and there's no time limit or anything like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. And, I think that I can honestly say that because, the number of experiences that I've had, that I've seen, that places that I've gone, things that I've had to do that I didn't want to do, that I fought, ultimately became an important part of what I needed to be doing in the future. And so I needed to learn that. And so I still go with that trust the journey even today, because I am still brought those moments of not knowing exactly where I'm headed, and still trusting that Spirit, Scott, is taking me where I need to go. So I will continue telling people that.
Beautiful. And I just wanted to add that this Sunday, as we all know, is Mother's Day. And Sara, for the past 2 or 3 years, I'm not 3, yeah, has been in Hilton Head and spoke at our local chapter meeting. So Sara's in Ohio, and there are no chapter meetings right now, but we're having our meeting via Zoom, and you're all invited to join us on Mother's Day, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, where Sara will be speaking to our group. So,
And we have some